Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our destination development workshop here in the Beaches region. This is a first step in a kind of a long destination development process that we'll be going through over the next number of years, and we're really excited to get this underway. So today, facilitating our meeting, we have Dan Moore. Dan Moore has been with the Washington Tourism Alliance a long time. He was a board member for many years and has been with us, fighting for advocacy and getting the legislation passed. And in the meantime, he also owned his own business, Evergreen Escapes, a tour guiding business throughout Washington State. And then he went into consulting, and now he owns his own consulting firm called Pandion Consulting. They do destination development all through Washington and the Northwest and Oregon and really all over the world, as well as tour guide consulting. And he will be leading today's discussion. So welcome, Dan.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks everybody for showing up today on a Monday morning. I was a little sleepy, so I'm sure that you probably are too, but I hope you had a great weekend. I'm based in the Seattle area, and here it was a little rainy, but we had some nice sun, as we call them, sun breaks here yesterday, and got out and enjoyed the day a little bit. So as Mike said, I run a consulting and training company called Pandion, and even though we're based in Seattle, we do work all over the world and do a lot of work with tour operators and outfitters and guides and helping them connect to destination and industry resources. We also do work around tourism development, which is what we'll be doing today. And so, but that's not really why we're here. We're here about you. First thing, Mike already alluded to this, but we all have, especially for those of us who are working from home, we have home responsibilities like family. We might have pets that are making noise. There might be construction. There might be all sorts of things, and that's perfectly okay. Of course, we'd love to be in person, but there are advantages to being virtual like this. For one, we can take care of some of those other obligations. But my dog Rusty is in the background, and he'll probably be barking at the mail carrier or who knows what at some point. And if you hear that, you can feel at liberty to have your own dog bark. But also, as Mike said, if we have to get up and do things during the course of these 4 hours, no problem whatsoever. We will be having several small breakout group sessions. So whereas these larger group can get a little challenging to stay focused, we'll be doing lots of small group so you get a chance to meet who else is in the room with us. And also just nice to have a gratuitous cute dog photo. All right, so again, we're here for a few hours, which is amazing that you're willing to dedicate your time like this. I hope it will be worth it for you. We've done several of these meetings throughout the state already, and they've been incredibly diverse and productive. Not every meeting has gone the exact same way, and we've a lot of people have been able to stick through the whole thing and felt really great that they were able to do that because really good connections have been made. So today we're going to get to know who's here, who's in the room. A big objective for this meeting is to learn about what the Washington Tourism Alliance is up to. And then we'll be sharing some examples of destination development that are going on in different places in the world, and then giving you a chance to identify some of the regional assets you would like to focus more on in the future, and figuring out ways that you all can work together to address some of those challenges. Key objectives for today are to connect you all to the tourism assets and resources that are available, and that includes your local DMOs as well as the state destination marketing organization, which is the Washington Tourism Alliance. Hopefully opening up illuminating some paths that you might be interested in taking to build tourism in your region, and identifying assets that are both developed and undeveloped that your region has to offer. And then, like I said, finally identifying some gaps and needs that could be addressed by the Washington Tourism Alliance in the future. So just to hone in geographically, as I said, we're doing this workshop throughout the state. Washington Tourism Alliance has identified 11 different regions in the state. They've been identified for before Washington Tourism Alliance, but recently working with community leaders, each of the region has been named. And so your region is named the Beaches region, and we'll be diving into what that means to you all later in the workshop. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of time to slurp down a couple sips of coffee and wake up a little bit. And now it'd be fantastic to hear who's here participating in this workshop today. And like I said, a big objective of today is that you all make sure that you're in contact with each other and know who's here and know who you can work with. So Mike, I'll let you do the magic of seeing who's in the room and calling people out to do a quick introduction. Mostly we're wondering what your name is, and if you're here representing an organization or a business, if you could say that. And it's great if you're just a concerned citizen as well. All are welcome. Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. And just there's a little note. For some reason, the Zoom is not letting a couple people in. So Lynette, I apologize. I don't know what is happening with that. I will work behind the scenes trying to make it happen for her. So first up, we have Jean.
Hi there. I'm Jean Finke, and I'm representing the City of Ocean Shores.
Thank you, Jean. Dave Blanford.
Good morning, everyone. Dave Blanford. I'm Executive Director of the Washington Tourism Alliance. Really thrilled you could join us this morning. And you'll hear more from me in just a little bit. And Mike, you might note the people having trouble getting on if they just paste that URL into their browser. That seems to get past the firewall.
Thank you. Mayor Dingler.
Hi, Crystal Dingler, Mayor of City of Ocean Shores.
Thank you. John Martin.
I'm the Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Ocean Shores and the incoming President of Greater Grace Harbor.
All right, thank you, John. Marcus Hins.
Morning, everyone. My name is Marcus Hins. I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon Coast Visitors Association. Our region spans from Washington all the way down to California.
Thank you. Vicki Rains.
Good morning. I'm Vicki Rains, Grace Harbor County Commissioner, District 3, which includes the City of Ocean Shores. Happy to be here.
Thank you for being with us, Commissioner Rains. Andy Day.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Andy Day. I'm the Executive Director of Pacific County Tourism Bureau, Visit Long Beach Peninsula, and honored to serve as your regional representative on the board of Washington Tourism Alliance.
Thank you, Andy. Beth Evans.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Beth Evans, and I am the Content Marketing Coordinator at Visit Long Beach Peninsula.
Thank you. Diana Thibodeau.
Hi, I'm Diana Thibodeau. I'm the Director of Operations for the Washington Tourism Alliance.
Great. Frank Wolf.
Good morning. I'm Frank Wolf. I'm one of the 3 county commissioners for Pacific County. My district takes in the Long Beach Peninsula.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Wolf, and we're really excited to have a lot of elected officials on today. That's fantastic. Let's see, Jacob Parrott-Cravey.
Good morning. My name is Jacob Parrott-Cravey. I do work along the Olympic Peninsula, but I'm here with representing Ocean Shores.
Great, thank you. John Shaw.
I'm the Executive Director at the Westport South Beach Historical Society, so I'm here for the South Beach. I'm also on the Westport LTAC Committee.
Great, thank you, John. Carla Jensen. Carla, you're on mute.
Yep, I got it. Hi, I'm Carla Jensen. I am with Long Beach Merchants Association. I'm the president and also serve on the board for the Long Beach Peninsula Visitors Bureau.
All right, thank you. Kelsey Norvell.
Hi, good morning. My name is Kelsey Norvell. I'm the marketing coordinator with Greater Grace Harbor, and we operate the Assets Discover Grace Harbor, which is on Facebook, Instagram, and part of our website is dedicated solely to Discover Grace Harbor kind of tourism efforts.
Great, thank you. I think I said this whatever. Kevin Decker, did we already do you? Sorry.
Nope, not yet. Hey everyone, this is Kevin Decker. I'm an economist with Washington Sea Grant.
Okay, great. Names are moving around, so it's getting more difficult here. Lynette Buffington.
Good morning, Lynette Buffington, CEO of Greater Grace Harbor.
Thank you. Madeline Moore.
Hi, Madeline Moore. I'm the executive director at the Columbia Pacific Heritage Museum in Ilwaco.
Great. Matt Lyons.
Morning, everybody. My name is Matt Lyons. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit outdoor rec organization called TREAD, which I'll be explaining a little bit later on today.
Thank you. Mike Bruner.
Morning, everyone. My name is Mike Bruner. I'm the manager of Grace Harbor County Tourism.
Mike Doolittle.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Mike Doolittle, Playtime Family Fun in Ocean Shores.
Mike. Tiffany Turner.
Morning, everybody. I'm Tiffany Turner, owner of Adrift Hospitality. I'm also on the Visitors Bureau board and on the WTA board for the state.
Thank you. And Vicki Rains. We might have already done Vicki. Okay, if I missed anybody, please raise your hand or let me know.
Hi, sorry to butt in.
No
This is Vicki Cummings from the Grace Harbor Council of Governments, of which the City of Ocean Shores has been a longstanding member, and I cannot get into the Zoom meeting, so I am on my cell phone.
I'm sorry, Vicki. We used a Zoom registration link this time, and I think that is kind of thrown a few people off for some reason. Their emails that just not letting in. I don't understand why. And so we are working behind the scenes to try to make that happen. But I apologize.
Thank you.
Good morning. This is Hartman on the phone as well. I can't get on through Zoom either.
Yeah.
Good morning. This is Ken Meehan, Grace Harbor Transit General Manager. I can't get on the Zoom either.
Right, thank you.
Good morning, Jake Harmony with Washington State Parks.
Thank you, Jake. Okay.
It's J-A-Y.
I apologize, Jake.
Thank you. No, that's okay. It's okay. I'm joining over the phone. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. If that is everybody, I think we'll go back to Dan Moore to lead us off here.
Great, thanks, Mike. I know that you probably got a billion things working to figure out how to get folks into the Zoom, but one way you could also maybe go to the invite in the Zoom here and put in their email. I don't know if that would help. Anyway, thanks everybody, and thanks for joining, and especially those who are having some technical challenges getting in. Really appreciate your dedication to call in. This is being recorded, and so anything you're missing visually, especially our smiling faces, you'll be able to watch later on. But again, appreciate your patience with that.
Dan.
So,
Dan,
yeah, go ahead.
Hold on one second. Kelsey Norvell just emailed me. Are you on, Kelsey?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you were able to get past this. So can you tell us how you did it?
So I was trying to log in with the Greater Grace Harbor Zoom account, which is our work one. And I think maybe my boss, Lynette, logged in through there. And so I had to go and create my own personal Zoom account, and then it let me in. And I had to verify it. I got a verify email. So I had to do the whole thing like a brand new Zoom user.
But it's a free account, right?
Yes, yeah, it's free.
Okay. And again, we
It's
apologize.
an authentication process for Zoom if you put strict restrictions on a meeting.
Okay. Well, I don't think we put any restrictions on it, but again, we'll work behind scenes. Go ahead, Dan.
Great. Well, it's actually not me. It's you guys again. So throwing it back your direction. But again, a key aspect of what we're hoping to do today is get folks throughout the state updated on what Washington Tourism Alliance is doing at the state level. And so here to speak about that is David Blandford, the Executive Director of the Washington Tourism Alliance. And David, I'll turn it over to you. And I think I'm stopped sharing my screen because you guys have some slides to share.
Great.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Mike. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Really, really glad to be talking with you this morning. Whether by video or phone, we'll figure it out here. Some of you know me, some of you may not know me. I've been in the tourism industry for many years, working primarily with Visit Seattle over the years in various capacities, but also going way back to the beginning, back in the 90s. I did quite a bit of work with the state tourism office then, including running press trips around the state, including to the beaches region multiple times, helping with collateral and photo library, video library building, those kinds of things. And feel like I've got some good experience in the far reaches of the state, everywhere in between. I grew up here, grew up in Snohomish County. Tourism really is my career. That has taken many twists and turns, and I think the most exciting one was working with the Washington Tourism Alliance and the industry back during those dark days when the legislature closed the state tourism office. For those of you who remember it, believe it or not, it's been 10 years, late June. Will be 10 years since the tourism office was closed. And for those of you who remember, the very next day, July 1st, the Washington Tourism Alliance was formed by the state tourism industry as an advocacy organization to begin to build back, find a creative solution to fund a state tourism marketing program. The industry was very decided that it should not be the way it was before, not a state agency necessarily, but an industry-led organization that would be solely focused on statewide tourism marketing. And so began a 7-year odyssey of advocacy to find a creative way to do that. We looked at many different ways of doing it, from industry assessment models, to more public funding. Ultimately, the winning model, I think, was a public-private model, a matching program. 2 for 1. The 2 is the industry with cash or in kind to unlock the 1/3, the public funds, the general funds from the state. And so that is the legislation that was passed back in March of 2018, and the governor signed it. It gave us very little money as a base funding, but it was really a foot in the door for us, and I think a cause for celebration back then. Since then, we have very intentionally began to rebuild a tourism office through the Washington Tourism Alliance. The legislation created the Washington Tourism Marketing Authority, which is really the oversight body, and as Tiffany Turner mentioned earlier, and we work with Tiffany and others who are appointed to that authority. And that authority really guides us in terms of what matching means, what our success is. They are responsible for signing a contract with a nonprofit organization dedicated to tourism marketing. That's us. They did that back in late 2018, and we have worked with them very closely since to make sure that we're aligning with the state, that we are going forward and building what needs to be built. I think if there's one hitch here, it's a hitch for everyone, which is that global pandemic. We got several months to almost a year down the road, very quickly beginning to rebuild and use our new funding to reestablish a tourism office. Everything from restoring photo and video libraries to building other kinds of marketing programs, repairing some of the lost assets over the years, and then the pandemic hit. And so that, of course, has been disruptive and very damaging to our industry statewide. But we've made the decision to keep on working through that. There's so much to be built. We have to believe that we will come out of this pandemic, and we're going to need those assets, those programs, so that we can help the industry recover very quickly. If you watch the news this weekend, you might have noticed that we're having some good luck in attracting some additional funding. We had a request for a $12 million budget proviso, which carried through in the compromise budget between the House and Senate. So we have $12 million that is in that budget, which is headed to the governor's office. And that money is very specifically for recovery programming. That's marketing, that is destination development like this and other programs. We know that the industry faces a 3 to 5 year recovery period, and we want to be there to assist and help this industry get back on its feet. So that leads me to really what we're building here, which is a new kind of state tourism office, one that is really aligned and responsive with the industry, and one that has a keen focus on recovery. Mike is going to walk you through a number of the programs and the assets that we're rebuilding. I might just kind of tee things off here with a key one, which is a destination brand. It's been more than 10 years since the state inaugurated a new destination brand. In that time, every other state has fine-tuned and tweaked and relaunched theirs. A brand, from a marketing standpoint, really is the platform on which you build your marketing programs. It is your marketing, it is your messaging, your communications. And we know that Washington needs to stay competitive and needs to be optimized in recovery. And so we began this program, the development program, way back in October with a statewide a stakeholder outreach. And we listened to a number of you here on this call and many others around the state to get your feedback. We thought it was an important step after 10 years to really hear your thoughts and hear about what you think Washington is and can be marketed. And so we are probably 75, 80% of the way through that progress. And right now we're in the creative part of that with our agency and working through a lot of the details there. So stay tuned with that. That brand will help guide a lot of the programs, the communications that you see going forward. And we'll also offer really a tool chest for you to use some of those assets and help amplify your own marketing and communications efforts. With that, Mike, I think I'll turn it over to you to talk about some other programs. And I appreciate everyone being here this morning. It's great to be talking with you. I'm here for a little bit and then have to break off for some other calls, but really am excited to be working with you on this program.
All right, thank you, Dave. Like Dave said, really the brand is the first thing. Pretty much everything falls off the brand. And one thing that is included in that is the consumer website. We've used experiencewa.com for almost 10 years now, and it's been a workhorse for us. It's been very valuable for our mission, but it is now time for a new website. And so as we're working on the new brand, we're also working on a new website. We're working with a company called Tempest. They are specifically a destination marketing organization website company, and they have done a number of other states. And we are looking to hopefully relaunch that website this summer. And along with the consumer website, there will be an industry side where people from the industry can get research and a brand toolkit and leads and that sort of thing, all sorts of things that we haven't really had over the last 10 years. And most states have, that industry component. And so we're very excited to launch the website on the consumer side and on the industry side. Just so you know what we've been up to since the pandemic hit, like Dave said, we're kind of all ready to go to start marketing Washington to the world, and then COVID happened. And so rather than do that, we focused our energy on showwhilelove.com. It was a website built to help businesses around the state connect with Washingtonians for gift cards, and just a way for Washingtonians to really support their favorite businesses around Washington State. And it was kind of a buy now, play later. We had over 1,100 businesses sign up for this, and it's been very successful. We ran TV commercials and radio spots and website advertising all throughout the state. Right now, we're focusing on road trips. We are working on a new road trip website. We think that that's what people are going to be feeling safe enough to do this summer, is get in their RVs or get in their cars and go and really explore either their home state or their home region. And so we are working with the regional destination marketing organizations to put together these road trips. And this will be where we'll be pointing people, in our marketing program this summer. Along with the road trips, we are developing a passport program. This was something that was really supposed to come out last summer, but then, the COVID, it's been up and it's been down, and it's been hard trying to market, being a destination marketing organization with COVID and just the roller coaster ride that we've been on. But this will work hand in hand with the road trip website, and it's kind of like an app. You register for it, and you'll go to different activities around the state. They're all very safe, trying to get people dispersed, and they'll check into these places. And if they check into 5 of them, they'll start winning prizes. And if you get, and then there's also a component where you can get entered into a grand prize package where you get to do some sort of cool experience throughout Washington State. And so this is something we've been working on for a while now, and they'll be coming out here along with that road trip website. We've also been working on filling up our digital asset library. When we took over from the state, we were really left with nothing as far as photos or videos, and so that's one thing that we've had to really work on. And so we have a road. Last summer we had a photographer go out all through Eastern Washington and the Gorge. We've had just recently a photographer go up through Whatcom County and the San Juan Islands. We had a photographer go up kind of the I-5 corridor, but also hit Long Beach. We had another photographer do storm watching up through along the coast, all the way up from Long Beach, all the way up through Olympic National Park. And so we're just filling, and this is an ongoing process, filling in these photos and these videos. We're also working on travel trade. And so even though the trade shows have gone virtual, we're still attending these trade shows on your behalf and trying to develop more product, especially, it's really a long-term goal, because, as things open up again, people from Europe and other countries are going to want to come to Washington, come to the United States. And so it's really about developing that product and bringing in those tours in a sustainable way. And that brings us to destination development. Like I said, this is just the beginning in a long program. And so, like Dan said, we're doing this kind of initial workshop in all 11 regions. What's been interesting about this is really finding that every region is kind of in a different place, and really it's just trying to meet those regions where they are and bring them into what destination development means, and then trying to work towards, building a sustainable tourism product. To that end, starting next fall, we have our Rural Tourism Development Program that will be starting. This will be based on the Oregon Rural Tourism Studio. And so regions will be able to apply for this program. We'll do one this year, and then from then on, we'll be doing 2 every year. And if you are able to apply to this and your region is successful, we'll do 1 full-day workshop with an expert, really trying to help your stakeholders define and develop the story of the region. And one thing to know that throughout this destination development, this is not for us to come in and tell you what to do. This is not at all that. We're really just trying to help, support your regional story and support, developing product in your region in the way that you want this to happen. This is not WTA trying to tell anybody, what to do. We just want to be here to support you in tourism development. So you'll have 1 core course talking about, defining that regional story, and then there'll be 3 elective courses, and destinations will be able to select 3 themed one-day workshops. So, for example, agritourism, or outdoor recreation, or bike tours and water recreation. And at the end of this full-day workshop, you'll be, focusing in on a specific project. Then the WTA you'll be able to apply for grant money to implement that specific project. And again, that'll begin here in the fall. And then 2 programs will be available per year starting next year. And then I wanted to tell you about a couple of grant programs that are happening right now through the Department of Commerce and the Washington Department of Agriculture. First of all, the Department of Agriculture has a couple of different grant programs that are ending today. And so I just want to make sure that you are aware of them. There is an agritourism grant. Now, I'm going to share a link here after I'm finished in the chat, so you can go and find more about it. But there's an agritourism grant for folks who have a farm that has an agritourism component of that. And then they also have a shellfish growers grant. They have also a brewery and distillery grant. And so I will go ahead and put that in the chat here after I'm finished. And then also the Department of Commerce has a couple of grants coming for shuttered venues, and another one for restaurants coming soon. And again, I'll put a link to more information for those grants in the chat. And then coming soon, there will be a WTA grant as well. Now that grant, it really depends. Hopefully the governor will sign the legislation that's passed this weekend, and so that might change that a little bit, but there will be a WTA grant coming as well. So next up, and Dan, if you want to take back the presentation, you can put back on your screen.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
Excuse me, this is Andy. If I could just interject, please, and I just really want, and I think it's especially poignant for this group.
Sure.
You know, all those years that we were lobbying and advocating to get funding for tourism marketing again. You know, when we really got traction was after we started working very closely with our former 19th legislative district, Senator Dean Taco, and then also with former Lieutenant Governor Cyrus Habib. And we really started talking about, and we integrated the kind of made it a priority that we would serve rural tourism development through these programs. And the whole approach there and was that, you know, we would teach a person to fish as opposed to giving them a fish. So we wanted to make sure that as we rebuilt this program and this organization, that we were giving rural communities, especially, the tools that they need to be able to market themselves going forward and have sustainable tourism growth, as opposed to just being marketed from the top down by a state agency. And so I think that's something, you know, our area in particular, there's a lot of people in this room that were very critical to that legislation getting passed and played a very important role. And I think that this is something we should all be very proud of in terms of creating and then, you know, just letting people know too, that this is something that is designed specifically to really help and serve all of our rural communities.
Yes, that's a really good point. And one thing I was just going to say, if anybody has questions about this is a great time to ask questions.
Hey, I have a comment, and thanks, Andy. I am proud to see this group back up and running. This is Jay from State Parks. I just wanted to comment on recreate responsibly has been a good motto for us over the last year or so. The tourism in state parks and reservations are record breaking over this last year. And we certainly appreciate the patronage. And however, there's a double-edged sword. And I just wanted to mention that some of our parks are getting loved to death, or the use, and some of our facilities are just not planned out and are maxing out on capacities at parking lots and that sort of thing. And we're managing as we can. But I just wanted to comment about trying to knit in recreate responsibly. I know my federal partners and other land managing agencies also have the same problems in terms of people not using the restrooms, just various different things, litter, getting off trail, that sort of thing. So if we have time today, just thinking about knitting that type of messaging into advancing our tourism in Washington State would certainly be appreciated.
Jay, you could not have teed me up better on what we're about to talk about. Like, just perfectly timed that comment. Thank you so much. And you're right. And the recreate responsibly, you know, really through everything we do is a really important message. You know, whether it's branding, you know, our brand is going to be values forward. Like, we want people coming here not just to be here, but also to be kind of share in the stewardship of Washington State. And that's something we've heard over and over again, you know, as we were doing our community outreach. And, you know, you're right, there's a huge problem in the fact that, it's impossible to communicate with people, it's been impossible to communicate with people, directly in real time. And that's been an issue all throughout this crisis. My wife and I went up snowshoeing this winter up the Snoqualmie Pass, and we ended up getting stuck for 4 hours because there's so many people in this one little area that we couldn't get out. And had we known there's another snow park just 10 miles down the road, we would have been, much better off, but there's just no way to communicate. And so one of the great things about this destination development workshop program is that we've really got to see what's going on in each of these regions and find these different projects. And so that's where I met Matt Lyons, who is working on a project called TREAD. And this TREAD is really working with land managers and developing this kind of communication system, but it's also, they're developing an app that can work in real time. And that app is really, really exciting, and it's unlike anything that we've seen before. And so I'm going to introduce Matt Lyons and let him take it from here.
Thanks, Mike. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I'm Matt Lyons. I'm the executive director of TREAD. I'm going to talk a little bit about TREAD as an organization and then introduce you to the app that Mike alluded to. Jay, thanks a lot for teeing that up. You nailed it. I think one of the things, if there is a good thing about COVID, it really kind of highlighted the need for us to be outside. And I mean, it was great for me because I have 2 kids. One's about to head off to college, and it forced them to be with their dad for a really long time. I don't think they enjoyed it as much as I did, but I really enjoyed that. But what it really highlighted was the health and wellness aspect and the economic development aspect of being outside. But man, did we overlove our areas. So I'm going to try to share my screen here real quick and see if this works.
Looks good.
And give you guys a little bit of a thing. Mike, I do have a video that I'm going to try. So if you can give me a thumbs up if the video works. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't on Zoom here. So this is what I think most people from out of state think about when they think about Washington State. Beautiful mountains, beautiful lakes, beautiful beaches. I'm alone on my hike. This is what I come here to see. And then this is what happened. Our beaches got overcrowded and trash everywhere. In our trails region, full disclosure, I'm from Central Washington. I live in Leavenworth, Wenatchee area. And we saw parking issues. I appreciate people bagging up their dog poop. I wish they would not just drop it once they did that. And obviously we saw a lot of this year. Some bad press for sure about it. I think it hit everybody. I don't think it was anybody's fault, but it speaks to the capacity issue. But what a good problem to have, right? People trying to get outside. Here's a rattlesnake ledge and some Forest Service toilets. And so we decided that we could help solve this problem a few years ago. Here in Wenatchee, we knew that people were going to come and we had to protect our assets and also invite people to come and enjoy where we live and play. And so the mission of TREAD is to be that space between land managers, user groups, outdoor rec, and trying to coordinate all of that with land managers, but also protect the assets that we have. So I'm going to try to share this real quick video that'll give you a little bit of a description of who we are as an organization, and then I'll dive into the app itself. So let's hope this works. Mike, can you hear that? Okay. All right. So Mike, that didn't work for volume? Okay, perfect. Well, let me tell you what the video said. It said we have some amazing assets and people are coming to play here, and we need to be that that space between those land managers and user groups. So long story short, I met a guy named Mark Rothmeyer, who has years and years of experience mapping. He maps all across the world, Washington State especially. And he had this pet project of his that he's been developing for years because he wanted to create something that gave back to the community. And so when I met him and understood what he was trying to do with this app, it really resonated with me because it's not an app like everything else that's for profit. So you guys probably all go outside and play. You probably have your own apps that you like to use that get you from point A to point B. One of the problems with those apps is that I can turn on my app right now, get on my mountain bike, drive down a hill, and record my track, and then share that track with everybody else. Problem is, I created that track. It's not really a trail. Land managers don't want me there, whatever that looks like, but everybody else sees it as one and they go there. So it's more about like advertising and creating clicks. Our app is more about giving people real-time information from land managers, informed from the back end, informed by user groups, so that you can know if the parking lot is full. If I go out and I see the parking lot's full, like Mike's example, I can pull up the app and I can just share that with everyone. If a tree's down, I can share that with everyone. Land managers get to see that. They can take care of the tree. Things like that. So it's real-time information, but more importantly, everybody that comes and visits the app and the advertising that we use, they have a trail story and they're there for the reason of giving back to local communities. So we want to take all this revenue stream, we want to give it back to local communities so that they can build a bigger parking lot, make those trail connections, whatever that looks like. So that's kind of what separates this app from other apps. We have a really unique opportunity here with the Washington Tourism Alliance. We just created a partnership and we're going to pilot this in the Trails and Lakes region, which is a 5-county region. So you think Kittitas, Grant, Okanagan, Chelan, and Douglas County. We're going to turn the app on throughout that entire region. We're going to pilot it. We're going to make sure everything is working, but most importantly, we're going to highlight local communities. So Mike mentioned routes and WTA's mission to kind of encourage people on these routes. Well, one of the things that we heard from land managers is, just like Jay said with state parks, overloved areas. So in the new version of the app, what we're going to allow land managers to do is identify those overloved areas. So in our area, Kolchak is #1. People want to go there. They want to go into the enchantments. They want to go there for this wilderness-like experience where they can be out in the pristine wilderness by themselves, get permits. And what they're seeing is 200 people walking by them while they're out there. We're seeing parking lots that are overcrowded. So what's going to happen is somebody could click on the trailhead for Kolchak and the land manager will have a message that pops up that says, hey, just so you know, from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., this place is overcrowded, it's full, but we recommend that maybe you could have a better experience nearby. So a half a mile from here, maybe you didn't know, but you could visit this, or a mile and a half from here, or 10 miles from here. So we're trying to encourage people to go to other places that are maybe a little less loved and get them a better experience. And that's what we all want, right? Everybody have a better experience. More people come, more people enjoy the app, more people enjoy the state. So what I'm sharing with you right now is a screenshot of the app. Like any other app, it gives you directions and you can click on trailheads. You can see the trail here, Stairway to Heaven. If I click on that, it gives me the mileage, the elevation change, the complexity. But specifically for tourism, and back to this idea of giving back to communities, we developed a piece where we can highlight our partners. So I just hit that button and you can see here, there's this little teardrop for Icicle Brewery in Leavenworth. And Icicle Brewery is like one of our best friends in the trail world. The owners of this brewery, they give back to the local trails. So we want to highlight them because they have a trail story. So if I click on their thing here, it shows, you know, there's their pictures. When I click on that, they can advertise their business. So we're encouraging people. But what I really like is this: by purposely spending your dollar in local places disclaimer. What we're trying to say is tourists are going to come to our town. They're going to ride the trails. They're going to enjoy their time, but they're probably not going to stay long enough to join a work party, pick up a shovel, maintain some trails while they're here. If they want to, this is great. We can take them, but they're probably not. But what they are going to do is they're going to spend their tourism dollar. So by encouraging them to spend their dollar at Icicle Brewery, in this example, we show their story. And here's why. We say, you're going to come here, you're going to play on trails. If you're going to buy a beer, we recommend you buy it from them because you can be rest assured that your dollar will go back into the trails you just played on. If we do that in every community, not only are we enhancing the businesses, but we're also encouraging that cycle of sustainable tourism. So we're pretty excited about that. And then of course, they can get driving directions. We send them to their website. This little percentage button here, they can offer a discount. So I can come in and say, hey, I'd like my 10% off. I saw this on the app, things like that. So super, super excited about the app. The real-time information is key. People want to know what's out there. So we have this direct feed. So I can go in there and say, like I said before, like a tree is down. People can see the picture that, oh, the tree's been cleared. There's the chainsaw I used to get rid of the tree. Now the trail's open. This time of year, especially, we're hearing a lot of people saying, is there snow? Is it too muddy? We don't want to damage the trails. When is it open? When is it closed? The other thing that this app provides is this alert system. So if there's a new alert, this is the first thing you see when you enter the app. So our land managers love this. So right here, an example is the local PUD. They're spraying for weeds and they wanted everybody to know. There's a power line that's down. There's a fire closure. Whatever it is, we can alert people to this. It's in Spanish and English. And then to get past this into the app and use the app, you have to hit continue. So we know that everybody's going to see this first. So there's that safety feature as well. Mike, I'm going to stop there real quick because I tend to talk too much. What am I missing? What else can I share? Any questions?
Well, first of all, just so you know, I've resent the confirmation email to everybody. So if you're on the phone, check that and see if you can get back into this meeting. Matt, tell us more about the relationships that you have with land managers and how that works.
So what TRED does, you know, we operate as that space between. So we created an ex officio group to help us kind of give us direction. So right now, TRED's been around for 3 years, and we have over 50 ex officio members. So that includes state parks, DNR, BLM, Forest Service, you name it, municipalities, cities, county commissioners, all attending these meetings alongside organized rec groups, the organized motorcycle group, the organized Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance, whoever that is. And what we do in these meetings is we get together quarterly and talk about all the projects that are going on, form partnerships, create efficiencies and collaborations, and then we end up being more competitive with grants. We get more work done. We highlight all the events in our community calendar. So think about this, it's all rec users coming into one space. Because right now, if I'm a mountain biker and I'm on the Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance Facebook page, I hear about their events, but I don't hear about the equestrian events or the running event or the rock climb. If every user is in one space and this community calendar is in one space, we can highlight every single volunteer opportunity. We can highlight every single fundraising opportunity. So we're driving more people to those local fundraisers that eventually lead to more infrastructure for our trails and systems. So we're kind of excited about this whole idea of bringing all user groups together into one place and just sharing that love. But really, those land managers are behind it, and it's authentic and it's real time and it's their information. So we know that our tourists and our visitors are getting the most accurate information possible.
Great. And Matt, this works for beaches as well as trails, right?
Oh, for sure. Beaches are a destination. So when we define trails, we had a little bit of a struggle with this idea. Trails are everything you recreate on. So snow, water, pavement, dirt, rocks, it's a trail. If you're outside playing on it, we consider that a trail. So we're highlighting every single place that people go to recreate.
Great. I think now just open it up to questions. If anybody has any questions about this, it's a great time.
There's a question in the chat, Mike, if you want to also after.
Go ahead, Lynette.
Just
that's my question in the chat.
Oh, great. Sorry.
Curious on the intersection with Washington Trails Association and the Trailblazer app, and then that which also competes with All Trails a bit. But curious if you're working with the other WTA.
Yes, sure. So we are, and rest assured, we don't want to be seen as a competitor, right? We're not in this business to take over anybody's anything. So we're working with our app developers and their entire team about creating APIs. So when something's posted on their site, it automatically feeds into ours and vice versa. Another thing that we do in a future update that I just saw a recent build on, which I'm kind of excited about, is as you download the app, which is free, by the way. Oh, and let me say this: QR codes, right? We're gonna get these in every hotel, every business. So this is how we drive people websites. But when you download the app, one of the first questions that you'll get is, are you a member of any of these statewide organizations? Are you a member of WTA, Evergreen, whatever? If you're not, we are encouraging you to join them in their efforts. And so we're trying to drive traffic to them. They rely on membership dollars. That's what we want to do to give back to them, because they give back to so many other things. So trying to make that collaboration work.
And how are you pulling map details and trail descriptions from others? Okay.
Yeah, we pull from everything that's either a partner or publicly out there. And then the best part about this is because it's land manager informed, they have access to the back end as administrators. And we created a dashboard that's super simple and easy to use. So they can go in and turn things on and off. They can change ratings. Maybe there's a typo, they can fix that right away. And then of course those alerts. So once this is turned on and live, and those land managers have been given the opportunity to feed the back end, it's as real as it can be.
Okay, thanks.
But did I hear you mention the counties that it serves, and Grays Harbor is not among those counties?
Well, what we're doing right now with our new partnership with WTA is we're doing a pilot program in the Trails and Lakes region. So we're starting with 5 counties in North Central Washington. If and when that goes well, we'll hopefully be pushing this across the state.
Okay, then Mike, this is Diane. I just have one other comment. When you were talking about the elective courses, and then we talked about recreating responsibly, do we have any input or say in what these elective courses could be? Because I think the recreate responsibly could definitely be one, and the visitor readiness could be one. So I'm just wondering how you're choosing those topics.
They're elective courses, so you guys will choose them kind of amongst yourselves in the full day workshop. And this is, the whole destination development program. This is, it's still an idea. We're still working on exactly how it's going to work. But the idea is for you and your region to get to decide, on what elective courses you take.
Hey, this is Tiffany. I just want to, you mentioned the QR code. I just want to kind of put a plug in there. We as a brand are really focused on intentionally kind of designing our collateral. So things like QR codes, we would want to make sure that we had access to just the code so that we could put it within our materials, not kind of something that's handed to us. So I think that's, not everyone feels like that, but we are very intentional on kind of what we put in front of guests.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Also, language is really important, and access for people that maybe don't speak English, right? So we want to make sure that we have this in multiple languages. The great thing about the app is it's signage in your pocket, right? So everywhere that we go, signage is good, bad, maybe it's lacking. This works without cell coverage. You can go in the middle of nowhere and know exactly where you are. It works without language, but we also want to include those QR codes. We want to include the directions in whatever language makes sense for you guys in your area. So definitely good comment for sure.
We have a question in the chat. How long is the pilot?
Well, Mike, I'll kick that back to you.
Well, the goal is to get the Trails and Lakes region up and running by Memorial Day, and then kind of let it run through the summer here. And then hopefully, if everything works well, then start to bring the full state online. In the coming 18 months or so. It's not a fast project. It takes a while, I think, to get everything, all the relationships built, all the app built, but we are going to be working as fast as we can.
So we have a team of developers that are working as fast as they can right now. Turning on the app and turning on the trails is the easier part, I think, because it's a switch. But where Tread comes in and why this thing is, I think, different from every other app is Tread comes behind it. So I will be working with land managers, user groups in all of those communities to feed that back end. And that's the part that takes some time. So we may be able to turn on the data, but coming behind it and building those relationships and doing all that great work to form collaborative units if they're not there, or highlighting the ones that are there, that will take some time. So it's going to be kind of a two-pronged approach. We can turn on the app, and then we'll come behind it and try to make this collective impact model work in every community.
And just to clarify, so the reason why we're doing this presentation at this point, of course, is just to alert you of, isn't this an interesting project and it might be useful to you all. But this is something that came out of one of these workshops that we did in the Trails to Lake region. So who knows what's going to come out here? Maybe another great idea that's going to be useful across the state. And that's really why this 2-lane highway is so important. So on the one hand, it's Washington Tourism Alliance learning from you all about what's important, about what is going on in your region and how that might apply to other regions and across the state, and vice versa. What's Washington Tourism Alliance doing that is going to be useful to you, that you can tap into, like grant programs and funding and tourism development. And it's that two-way line of communication that is so key here. And so again, we put this announcement in at the end of the Washington Tourism Alliance updates, because this is both an example of that grassroots element of what WTA is trying to do in each of these regions, and it's growing and building. But the questions are also great, and Matt, I know that you're hearing these questions and excited for the ones that you wanted better answers to. You're going to go back and learn from them, and that's really the point of this kind of dialogue and working at the grassroots like this. I think if there aren't any other questions, we can move on to the next section here, which is again a bit more updates and information. And basically, a motivation for this workshop, again, is to connect you across the region as well. So I would like to open up this opportunity to hear from the different DMOs and the chambers that are working within the region. And Mike, I might turn it over to you to call out some folks specifically to give some updates on just what's going on.
Great. And we're just talking about like a 2-minute, just to kind of overview what's happening in your area. Andy, do you want to talk about what's happening in Long Beach?
Sure, I can kind of lead off. So, boy, I would say everything's happening. There's so many things moving in so many different directions. But I would say one thing, kind of panning up to the maybe 15, 20,000 foot elevation level, we are seeing a distinct need and shift overall from marketing to development, and we're seeing that. It's not just sell. It's about how do we support our partners and communities in delivering the product in a way that is, the most profitable, has the least negative impact for our communities. And so in some instances, that's, creating programs that serve members and partners. In some instances, that's, parsing resources to develop product. And in some instances too, it's trying to kind of bring people together and maybe get folks moving in a common direction as far as, our messaging and how we market ourselves. And then I would say too, this is all stuff that we knew was on the horizon and that we were working toward, quite deliberately. I would say the, pandemic effect is that everything is accelerated. These are things that we had, kind of in the work plan for maybe the next 2 or 3 years. And it's like all of a sudden it's implement now. So without going into too much detail, that's kind of where we are. And I know there's several other people from Pacific County on the call too. So if I miss anything, jump in. But
all right, thank you, Andy. Mike, do you want to talk about Grays Harbor?
Mike. Yes, I do. Thank you. So we're continuing to adapt our marketing to our current world, like everybody else is. We're hoping things continue to open up, so our local businesses can benefit from visitor activity, which is actually doing really well. We're for the first 4 months of the year, we've seen actually quite an increase, not just over what we had in 2020, but in 2019. So we're adapting marketing, going to shorter TV spots to try to get more potential views and It's we hope that the trend continues in visitors, and that we're able to keep businesses open to support our tourism.
Great, thank you, Mike. And Mayor Dingler or somebody from Ocean. Oh, sorry. Mayor Dingler or anybody from Ocean Shores, if you'd like to give a little update.
Hi, this is the mayor. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I will pass to Lynette Buffington and Diane Solom, who are much more knowledgeable about what's going on than I am in this arena.
No problem. You're the mayor though, so I have to start with you.
Yeah, I know.
I'll give the floor to Diane, and then for what Greater Grace Harbor is doing, I'll give the floor to Kelsey Norville from our organization.
Well, thank you for that. I'm just getting back from 16-day vacation, so not exactly prepared to talk to this. I do know that our tourism last year was, our visitors were over and above the year prior, and we are dealing with the same challenges as everyone else, just an oversaturation when we weren't really prepared. And with the restaurants closed and things like that, we didn't have restrooms available. So we really had the same challenges as everyone else, just being oversaturated. We are doing a local campaign that is focused on recreating responsibly here, where when visitors come to the Visitor Information Center, they'll sign a pledge saying that they promise to leave Ocean Shores as good as they found it. And there's a couple little bullet points we ask them to do. And then they get a free postcard with that. And hopefully, and we'll capture names and addresses and email addresses and things like that so that we can continue to have a conversation with them. And with that, I'm just going to give it back to you, Lynette.
Thanks, and I'll let Kelsey chime in. I should just preface that Greater Grace Harbor, I think I'm slurring a little bit because of connectivity. Greater Grace Harbor is not a VIC, but we do tourism economic development, meaning we're connecting commercial enterprises to visitors. So Kelsey, the floor is yours.
Yeah, and on Lynette's note, we're not a VIC, but we work with LTAC and county tourism, as well as kind of run our own, like I had mentioned, social media accounts. It's called Discover Greece Harbor, where we market the county as a whole. On that note, there's a portion on our website, /Discover Greece Harbor, where I write content for a blog, covers the entire county. On our site, there's also a community event calendar where people can come in and submit their own events, but I also go out and look for anything on Facebook. Of course, with COVID, it's been all Zooms, so it's kind of nice to see some in-person events coming back. Yeah, and a lot of it's just creating content and sourcing it from visitors in the area. So I'll actually search hashtags Grace Harbor, Discover Grace Harbor, and recycle their content. I get their permission and share it. So that's kind of a fun part of Discover Grace Harbor, where people can basically submit their own photos to be featured. So that's just a few of our things, but there's always a lot going on, and kind of pivoting, of course, with COVID is a constant. So kind of excited maybe for summer to be kind of back to normal.
Thank you, Kelsey. Anybody else who wants to just share a brief update on what's happening in your region that hasn't been touched on yet? All right, back to you, Dan.
Sorry, this is Tiffany. I was just going to maybe put a point on some things that have been said earlier. You know, we've been, I think, busier than ever at the beaches. And so that sustainable tourism model is really critical, and making sure that we're really focused on shoulder seasons and not the high season, because it really has been pretty impactful to our beaches and our community. And I think we're getting close to over tourism in you know, sometimes, which I think is important to remember.
Absolutely. All right, thank you, Tiffany.
And just to, I don't think, Mike, you mentioned this, but in terms of the initiative for Recreate Responsibly, I was on the board of the WTA through last June, and I participated in that group. And I know, Mike, you were in many of those meetings, and now the person who took my place on the board, Tommy Ferris, who is just in the region to the north of you all in the Peninsula's region, has been showing up to those meetings and participating as well. And I think we focused a lot on the outdoor recreation and those aspects. So far in this meeting, there's also a lot of cultural and culinary and agritourism and so many other things. But really those outdoor rec assets have been hit pretty hard by people just wanting to get out and do something. And so I think the coordination that's happening with Recreate Responsibly, but also just folks like yourselves getting around a table like this and making sure you know who's out there and working together to deal with some of those challenges is really important. Just in case you didn't have it, I put Matt's contact information up here from TRED. We did our update from local folks, so hopefully now you feel more connected to who is out there. And that brings us to the section of this workshop where what I'm really excited about is for you folks to have conversations across the region. And so, like I said, we this is the map of Washington State, which includes all of the 11 regions, and your region is the beaches regions. You can see who you're bordered up against and who are your larger regional partners. And an objective of this meeting is to make sure that you all feel connected across this region, that you are working with partners in other counties. You to some extent are already doing that, but that's what the WTA is excited about, bringing folks together like this, is so how can you work together as a larger region and then team up with WTA. So what I'd like to do before we're going to work on a small group activity here, and then when we come back, do a report on that activity, and that will bring us to our first break of the day, which will be a 15-minute break right around the top of the hour. And so what I'm excited about here is that now you're going to get a chance to break into smaller groups, maybe be in a group with some people that you didn't know before this meeting, or maybe you knew about but hadn't worked with in the past. So we'll break into smaller groups, and that will be randomly decided based upon the Zoom algorithm. And what I want you to do in those smaller groups is to define characteristics for all of the beaches region. So you might be familiar with Ocean Shores, or you might be or West Point, or Long Beach, or you might be familiar with your specific area, but are there characteristics that define the entire region? And then discuss what tourism looks like in this entire region, both currently and even a bit about where you think it will go. And then choose the top 3 items that you're excited to share with the group from this discussion. And so you'll need to choose somebody who's willing to speak in front of the entire room here. So again, you'll break into smaller groups, define characteristics that unite the entire beaches region, discuss a bit about what tourism looks like in this region, and then come up with 3 items from your discussion from either step 2 or step 3 that you'd like to share with the larger group. You might want to take a photo of this slide if you have your phone handy, or you can do a screenshot, just because once we break into smaller rooms, you won't be able to see any of my presentation anymore. And it's happened where people break into the smaller group and they say, what were we supposed to do again? But hopefully if somebody in your room will remember. If not, you'll just have a conversation about what you did over the weekend, and that's probably productive as well. Mike, I'll turn it over to you to break us into groups. I think if we do this for 20 minutes, do you think that is a good enough time? And then we can come back and have large group discussion.
Yep. Okay. We'll say 9:30 is when we'll end this. All right.
Okay. Well, I assume that since we were abruptly brought back, everybody else got brought back to the larger room here. And I'd love to hear, again, some of the key characteristics that your group thought unites the whole region. Again, that can be difficult because your name might be simple, beaches, but there's a lot more than just beaches in the beaches region. And then also, what does tourism currently look like in this region? And if you can, each of the groups can share one or two items that were inspiring to you or motivating to you, or just that you specifically remember. Either of those choices are perfect. Who'd like to start?
I'll go ahead for, I think we were room 6. We didn't name ourselves or anything like that. We didn't have a team cheer.
No mascot.
So aside from the commonality of we're beaches that connects us, it was a lot of ocean shores and obviously Pacific County folks. We're not just a tourism industry. We have other natural resource industries happening parallel to our tourism industry. And so that is different than maybe solely tourist communities. And then our rurality. We're rural. We had broadband issues in our breakout call. So that is a unique feature of our community. Those are the big 3, the rurality, the other industries that are involved, and the dependence on natural resources in our communities.
Excellent. Yes, the many of the reasons that make it such an incredible tourist destination are some of the challenges as well. Being outside of the major cities is a reason why people want to go there, but then there is infrastructure challenges. And I think that character of the other industries is part of the storytelling that also is so powerful when travelers visit. I know I'll speak for myself. That's one of the things I love about visiting the beaches region, is just knowing that there's a lot more going on there and has been going on there for I don't know, a century or more, I guess. Okay, who else would like to share? And jumping in and sharing, saying we said the same thing is perfectly acceptable too, because that identifies that it's not just the small groups that had some alignment, but maybe other groups are feeling the same ideas. Who else would like to jump in?
Hi,
Carol?
it's Carol Zahorsky. How are you? We talked about beach, of course, as the first thing, but we narrowed it just a little bit to a beach lifestyle. So we got into just it not just being the beach itself, but the people that are living there and the people that come there. It's a beach lifestyle, and more relaxed and maybe insensitive to the environment, I think, for the most part, because you're on a small, almost like an island. Working waterfronts came up from our good partner Marcus on the Oregon coast, because we have working waterfronts. We don't really call it that. He asked how many ports we had. And I think that those things, and if we combine those with our beach communities, working waterfronts and beach communities, it lets people know that we live there and we have other industry there, and that there's things to do because people live there. You're not just going to a place that's void of, like a Disneyland that's void of people. And then you bring some sensitivity to that, hopefully, as a good tourist. The last one got a little muddled, but we were talking about how there's more to do. So we have, multiple recreational opportunities. And it started from the fact that we have multiple kind of environments. And we talked a lot about birding and the other wildlife within that it's a key characteristic of the area. I think is that all you needed from me, I think, yes.
That's wonderful. A fantastic report. Nice work. What, Carla, are you raising your hand?
Yes, I was just gonna say that we basically said some items very similar, that beaches is one of the main things that brings us all together, of course. That's why we're all together at the moment. Outdoor activities, including birding and recreational, and then producers, agro-tourism being a large part that all of us similarly have.
That's great. Very good reports. Let's see, Frank, can I pick on you? I think you're the only one in our group still that I see here. Oh, Kevin's back, but he could speak too if you don't want to.
I'm not going to fight Kevin for it. I'll put it that way.
I can speak up. Sorry about that. Still adjusting from my tech malfunction here, but so I think some of the things we talked about are that tourists don't necessarily recognize some of the delineations, whether that be at the state level, the city level, the regional level, even what we're defining here. That a lot of commonality comes from the natural amenities, not just the beaches. That some of that is really highly concentrated though, and that there are a lot of other amenities within the region that just don't get used as much and maybe could be highlighted. And I think we touched very briefly, or at least it was mentioned, these ones on agritourism, which I think is something else that is throughout the region. So Frank, if you want to add anything to that.
That's okay.
Oh my gosh.
All right, thank you. The other groups, I can't remember how many groups we had. Who hasn't spoken yet? Susan?
Hi Dan, hi everyone. Our group came up with a couple of things. Water recreation, both fresh and beaches recreation, and that would include things that are really big to our region, like recreational fishing and clam digging, as well as all kinds of different kinds of water recreation. Food and culinary, because of all the fresh seafood and unique, best in the world seafood and restaurants around here, and cultural and historic sites like lighthouses and many other things that we have in the region to visit. Those were our top three.
Wonderful. Thanks. And there are some similarities here. There's a lot of, and that would be logical. That's why this region is identified as it is. But it is good to hear that folks are gravitating towards some similar themes, some similar ideas. And just to reiterate, the purpose of having regional regions within the state tourism is because each of your communities has unique stories and has messages that you want to share to the world. But for the traveler that's coming in from out of state, it's going to be much more difficult to receive messages on why to visit Washington State based upon hundreds and hundreds of unique, diverse stories. And so it can be powerful when a region comes together and identifies what are some unifying stories that come from that connect this whole region. And so then when the state Washington Tourism Alliance goes to do the marketing out of state and out of country even, that more concise narrative that is accurate and authentic can rise to the surface and is an attractive message to bring people there. And then when they get to you, they go to the smaller communities and they learn that there's a lot more going on and the story's deeper and richer and diverse. But a big reason for connecting at the regional level is in order to be unified onto what you want to tell the world at that level. The other reason to unify is to work on tackling challenges that exist. So for example, in our group, it was brought up about the Rails to Trail bike route that starts in Lewis County and is working towards Pacific County, I believe it is, and that funding dried up for the Pacific County portion of it. And so working collaboratively region-wide to identify some infrastructure pieces like that to go after grant funding, whether that's through WTA or at the state level, and tackling these challenges, some of which take, as was brought up about broadband, for example, those can take years to deal with, but if we don't start today, if we don't start unified, we're not going to tackle some of those challenges. Anything else that was missed? Any groups that I overlooked that would like to speak up?
One thing I wanted to let you know is I put the link to the Commerce grant program in the chat, and that also will link you to the Department of Ag grants as well. So just a small note there.
See, Dan?
Yes.
I wanted to make, I'm not sure, I looked over, I'm not sure if anybody from Wahkiakum County made it on to our call yet today, but I just want to make sure everyone realizes that they are part of our region as well. And we need to keep that in mind as, you know, we move forward.
Wonderful.
We don't leave them out.
Exactly. And again, that's where, and Andy, I'm not speaking to you directly because you probably taught me this, but the lack of a statewide tourism entity for 10 years or 8 years or whatever the exact number from when the state went dark until when WTA got funding, it didn't really hurt Seattle that much, didn't hurt Spokane as much, and even some of the bigger destinations in your area, it might not have hurt as much, but it's the rural and smaller communities that got hurt the most, and not just because they lack the major funding that some of the cities can pull together from lodging taxes and whatnot, but also just the opportunity for folks to come together like this, have conversations and discuss what their vision is for tourism across the region, as well as how to tackle some of these challenges that smaller communities, smaller counties for that matter, will struggle to do on their own. And so, Andy, thanks for pointing that out. And later in this workshop, we're going to discuss who's not here. And if there's somebody from a whole county that's part of the region, if there's nobody representing there, that would be a great outreach strategy to go and get some folks from that county to show up at future events. Okay, unless if there's further conversation about this subject and about how we work at uniting this whole region together with the diversity of people in this call, I think now's a good opportunity to take a 15-minute break and give you an opportunity to deal with your personal stuff, whether that's your family or your pets, or if you're working, to deal with some work emails and phone calls and things like that. So it's right about 9:45. So let's come back together at 10 o'clock and we'll jump into the next phase of this workshop, which is discussing some case studies and giving you some potential paths that you might want to take when you're working to develop the beaches region. Again, thanks everybody for your participation up to this point. We're going to have much more small group activities when you come back, so hopefully you enjoyed getting to know people a little bit more intimately. We'll see you at 10 a.m. So this next section here, what I'm hoping to do is just give you a bit more of a window as to when we're talking about destination development, what are we talking about? And what are some of the different paths that might get illuminated for you to consider taking and determining as a region? So the first thing I think is, at this point in this conversation, if you don't already know, we should define what destination development is. And if Washington Tourism Alliance is our destination marketing organization for the state, why is our marketing organization doing destination development? What is the motivation there? So on the first question, I will answer that with the Utah's Tourism Authority, and they define it as any activity that increases and improves the quality of a visitor's experience in a travel destination. So the idea is, if you're welcoming people to your region, you will want to have something for them to do that is developed, that's good for them, but also that this is good for the local community as well. So if people are just organically showing up and there's nothing for them to spend money on, or the infrastructure is such a way that it clogs people in certain places and causes a big amount of impact, then you might benefit from destination development. If tourism isn't a net positive for the local community, it's not a good industry for the community. So destination development works on that. From the WTA perspective, well, you need to have something to market, and so that's might be oversimplistic, but the idea, as we were discussing earlier, is that when you're going to market something outside the state and especially outside the country, the narrative needs to be unified, and I don't want to say simplified, because I think you can have a complex narrative that can be presented in a digestible and simple way. And so by bringing folks from a larger region together to discuss what that message you want to send to the world, and make sure that it is determined at the grassroots level, and that you're building tourism infrastructure, small businesses, um, land management tools, all sorts of components like that. You're doing so in a way that brings people, that is democratic and that brings people to the table. But then the net product is something that the statewide entity can go to the greater nation and world and can tell a story that is compelling. That's really that's why WTA is focused on that, among other reasons. And then the third aspect to destination development, which has been touched on numerous times in this workshop already, and this comes from Sustainable Travel International. Left unchecked, tourism growth and development can harm the destinations that we love. And again, I think your communities know that better than any of us in the state to some extent, especially some of the what I was hearing about shortly once the pandemic started and people just flocking to the beaches region thinking that there's no impact if they go and potentially bring COVID to other rural places, and when things are closed there's not as much economic development. So the destination development component is a tool for you as a community to determine what do you want tourism to look like, what is not looking like that currently, and how to get there. And that's the workshops that Mike pointed out at the beginning of this workshop will give you those tools to organize regionally and really determine those things. So I'm going to share two case studies with you that I think have some relativity to your community. And at the end of it, you're going to break into small groups again and just discuss, was there anything that came up in these case studies that are relevant to your region? If so, is there anything you can learn that you might want to apply? Also, is there anything that you are excited to pursue from hearing these? So the first case study is, so we'll come back to the slide, so you don't have to remember this now. Once I go through these two case studies, I'll put this slide back up, then we'll break into smaller groups and you can then discuss. The first case study is a series of slides that I've produced about a region in Quebec, specifically the Saguenay Fjord or Saguenay region of Quebec. It's right off of the St. Lawrence Seaway. And as you can tell from this map, it is a rural place. The Saguenay itself is a relatively, it is a bustling town, but surrounded by lots of rural and also wilderness areas. This region for many, many years was put on the map because of its resource extractive industry. So forestry was huge, timber harvesting. They also had an aluminum smelter and they harvested raw materials for aluminum. And of course, being the rural nature, there's a lot of agriculture. Some of the agriculture it comes from trees as well, and that's the maple syrup industry is very prominent in this area. Well, as many rural places where industry, the amount of jobs available declines, even if the industries themselves are doing just fine due to mechanization and other outsourcing. These three industries were declining and the jobs and the economies were struggling tremendously. So at the province level, they came up with this idea. They called it Plan Nord, which was the province level to work on rural economic development. And then specifically for this part of Quebec is the program Accord. And what they did was they identified tourism assets. And so they, some of the key aspects were the indigenous and the cultural tourism, which was very prominent in this area. So, and as well as eco and adventure tourism, which were both very prominent in the area. And then they worked collaboratively to develop those assets. So in terms of the indigenous tourism, there was an Indigenous Tourism Association of Quebec, which is united with the Canada's Indigenous Tourism Association. Funding was put towards development of tourism infrastructure for those sectors. For the ecotourism and adventure tourism, there were trails built. The aluminum industry was repurposed into the storytelling, and they recruited a aluminum bicycle manufacturer to relocate to Saguenay and tap into that market. So after 10 years of this project, there were several points of success that were identified. And the keys to those success were due to the partnerships and collaboration. So similar to what we're trying to do here in the Beaches region, many people were brought to the table to have conversations about what tourism should look like, where the gaps were, and how to fill them. And there were partnerships all across the sector, and we'll discuss that towards the end of this workshop, what partnerships look like. A key aspect is that the community was brought to the table. In the small group session that I had, we discussed how local people often look at tourism, especially in places where you get throngs and throngs of tourists coming and having a negative impact. They look at tourism as a negative. So if you're going to the community saying we want to grow tourism, they might say that's ridiculous. That's the last thing we want here. But you bring community to the table, have conversations about what sustainable tourism looks like, and allow them to create the vision that they want for tourism, and then the community gets bought in better. They worked hard by attracting funding to be able to develop high quality infrastructure. So to bring people from outside the region, and especially outside of Canada, it required them to actually build infrastructure that was world class. So in terms of the mountain biking trails, in terms of the agritourism resources, developing the cultural tourism piece, that was key for their success. And they didn't focus on attractions and experiences that you can find everywhere else in the world. So they didn't, as much as you might love golf and you might have world-class or great golf courses in your region, they didn't build a golf course thinking that they were going to be able to compete with other places that have world-class golf. They focused on what was unique to their region. So their indigenous tourism, the cultural components from being the French-speaking aspect of Canada, the nature and ecotourism was key, and the rural nature, just the open spaces and the expansive scenery. In order to benefit local people with jobs and with entrepreneurialism, you can't just assume that somebody who had been working in timber harvesting all of a sudden can turn around and open up a tour company. They might have the local knowledge, and they certainly know the outdoor knowledge, but there's a lot of work that goes into human resource, into training and how to manage businesses and so on. And so part of the Plan Nord included investing at the university level to provide courses and training. And then, of course, you do need to have the marketing component, but all of these other factors were essential in order to have something that they could market outside the region, outside of the province, and internationally as well. So the next case study that I'd like to share with you comes from our neighbors to the south, and we have, you're all probably familiar with Travel Oregon, which is the Washington Tourism Alliance for the state of Oregon. And unlike Washington, where we canceled out our funding for tourism 10 years ago and had to rebuild with hard work from all of you advocating to build funding, Travel Oregon has been going strong since the early 2000s and has been focusing on destination development. And so thankfully, we can learn from others when we determine how we want tourism development to look like in our region. And so they've produced a whole series of videos on their tourism studio process. And this is the one from what they refer to as the Wild Rivers Coast, which is southwestern Oregon. So you folks are in southwestern Washington. I thought that this would be applicable to you, and I'm curious again whether you agree with me. So I'm going to play this video, and hopefully you can hear it and you can see it, and we'll come back and do the small group activity.
One of the things I really appreciate about our entire region is that we embrace who we are, and I think that's what unifies us. Once the timber and fishing industries collapsed, it took us a long time to get back on our feet. People didn't quite grasp the idea that once these jobs left, they weren't going to get other family wage jobs, and it crippled us.
Things were getting really dire. So we just saw that this was an opportunity to maybe look at that public land a little differently and how it could bring more dollars into our region.
The Wild Rivers Coast is so unique because there are more wild and scenic rivers here than anywhere else in the lower 48 states. The scenic beauty is just amazing. There's so many different places to go, from the national forest down to the protected ocean, and it's just a really special place.
I guess I didn't really know how special it was, though, until I moved away to Portland and came back and saw all the potential here.
We're uncrowded, we're unspoiled, and we're a little difficult to get to, but my God, once you come here, you fall in love.
We just thought if we could pull people to come into this Wild Rivers Coast and stay longer and explore a little farther into our backcountry, there was a lot of opportunities for them to experience.
I think our whole future is at stake here. This area is ready to go. We just need to give it a little kick in the butt.
I'm gonna be honest, when the Rural Tourism Studio came here, I was skeptical because I didn't see far enough ahead that we actually could collaborate regionally, and I'm pleasantly surprised. It's been amazing.
The Rural Tourism Studios was the first time we were able to come together as a region to talk about the future of our economy.
If we can have a strong tourism economy in this area, it's gonna benefit the whole community.
We have to rely on ourselves, and I think through this program, it's sort of opened our eyes to what we could do when we work together. Community leaders really focused on 3 areas: outdoor recreation, food and agricultural tourism, and really building community relationships.
In our area, a lot of the food that's grown all gets shipped away. And so now we're realizing that we can capture some of that local food that's grown here. The Eat Fresh and Local Action Team has hosted a series of networking events bringing together the area growers with the area vendors so that we could have more local food available to the visitors to our area. And now we're seeing more local food in our grocery stores, in our restaurants, and we have a new local food co-op.
We created a farm trail from Pandion to Port Orford. We did 9 U-Pick farms, and it just gained traction, and people loved it.
Langlois is less than 500 people. It's very small. So we have to bring in tourists. And being on the farm trail, even though it's just beginning, has really helped do that. We really want to make it a destination for anybody. My mom and I began Dragonfly Farm just 3 years ago. When I found out that I could grow a seed and turn that into food, it was like, oh my gosh, why wouldn't you do this? I just quit my day job and I just signed the paper to be an official co-owner of the farm. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life and grow with the community.
Out of the Outdoor Recreation Action Team, we came up with a series of maps that show where the best places to go recreate are. We know where we're going to send people now, and we got a great map that shows all the best places to go see.
For us to get a mapping project done to this extent is pretty impressive. We're patting ourselves on the back. I don't know anybody else is, but we're doing it.
From that, we decided that there was some places that needed help. So we came up with a mountain bike plan, and we also worked on designating a state scenic bikeway. The Outdoor Recreation Action Team was also looking at how we can make scuba diving better in this area. So we came up with the idea for a scuba fill station. So now people that want to come and dive in this area, they can dive for multiple days because they can get their tanks filled up again. When I started the Rural Tourism Studio, my business, South Coast Tours, was really small. And now we've grown to about 5 or 6 guides, and we're doing tours all over from Brookings all the way up to Coos Bay.
Overall, tourism is on the rise here. We've had a bang up last 2 years, and it's like a breath of fresh air down here.
My hope for the area is that we still keep that sense of place.
Loving a place to death is a big concern that I have, and it's a balance. We're going to promote tourism, but we want to do it in a sustainable way. One of the biggest reasons that this area has been so successful since the tourism studio is the people that are involved. We have a lot of great, motivated, smart people who understand the need to promote tourism in the right way, and it's really all about the people.
When you live in a rural community like we do, from Pandion down to Brookings, and you're strapped for cash, relationships are crucial.
As a community, I think you need to come together and find out what your mission and goals are collectively. Then you can work into smaller groups, knowing that you have the backing of the whole community behind you.
As long as everybody's just super excited about it and passionate about what they're doing and they can work together, then anything's possible.
Own what you have and don't try to be something that you're not. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna take a long time. So roll up your sleeves and just dig in with an open mind.
Okay, so a couple different communities around North America to have you inspired to think about what is possible. Obviously, my case study, it doesn't quite have the Saguenay region does not quite have the bang as a world-class professionally and expensive video does, but hopefully you still found some relevant information from the first case study as well. So we're going to break into smaller groups here. And again, the objective here is how does your communities compare to the two regions that we're focused on? And were there any ideas or thoughts that you were excited to pursue leaving this workshop today? Mike, anything I'm missing, or are you ready to split us up into, I guess we should determine a time frame as well. Yep. Maybe again, another 20 minutes, or is that enough time?
Yep, and this time I'll give you a 5-minute warning just so I don't cause any panic in any of the rooms.
A lot of anxiety was caused by you, Mike.
Get that a lot.
Okay, so 20 minutes, so that basically was that 10:45, we'll come back together.
All right, no problem.
All right, so let's hear, were there was there any similarities between the communities presented in your community? Anything that you're excited to pursue after seeing what is possible?
I'll go. The question was, how do we compare? So we didn't talk about a similarity. We actually went into depth about how different we are from those communities. We, our little group, none of us have found the key, the success key for community buy-in. And it's a real issue with us. And so we talked a little bit with Marcus, who seems, they seem to have found a little bit of those keys, and explored with him how he did that and what he did. But we really haven't found community buy-in here, and Andy said they haven't found it there, and we struggle with that a lot. And so that will always be a little block that we have to to stumble over until we do find that successful key.
And I would add on to that too, if I may, Dan, I think it's like beaches, I think, are a unique product that way, and that it's such a strong, beaches themselves are such a strong product, but it's like we have a really hard time carrying that inland and having the entire county recognize what the tourism industry, the impact and what it provides. The other thing that we kind of talked about a little bit that we really need is some very localized data, and by localized I mean coastal data, and that would be something I'd love to see on the wish list, maybe as a region, that we come up with some a really great localized data source. And I know we have the opportunity to co-op for the C-source data, but I'd love to see something even deeper and more specific to tourism, in terms of what portion of the overall economy is from tourism.
And then I hate to be, I guess, somewhat political, but one of the people who has successfully got community buy-in did say these exact words: the retirement community is pretty much hopeless, and you pretty much leave them out and you talk with businesses. And so that was an eye-opener to me. So that seems to be the case in our little city, where that's who we struggle with the most in trying to get some buy-in in tourism.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, that's where I definitely am challenged, and Frank can attest to that. He watches me go head to head all the time, and it's like a tightrope act, navigating between business and retirees.
Andy, one thing I saw on that South Oregon coast one, and I think both areas are really like that because there is the mix of communities, is they went forward with a few really strong, enthusiastic people. And we have we have Tiffany, and we have Madeline, and we have you, and we have Sue, and we have, we Jules, and if we tapped that enthusiastic bunch, and that was kind of like our sustainable tourism action group, I think that's kind of what's going to take us forward. I think the others are going to come along. We need the buy-in, but I put that in the notes directly to Dan, just to say, what do we do? Because we've had tourism since the end of the 18th century, or 19th, whatever, and 1800s. And we have people that are still in the mindset of 100 years ago on how tourism should work and what it should do and what it should look like. And how do we go forward with that too? How are we not dragging 100,000-pound gorilla behind us, the whole time? I don't know. I understand the struggle though. And the one thing I was inspired by was the group of young, enthusiastic people, young and old, whatever, but enthusiastic people moving forward.
Yeah, and I just want to take the opportunity to acknowledge Marcus for being here from Oregon and seeing the benefit. As we've talked about in the past, travelers don't often see a state boundary, even when there's a giant river mouth in between the two. There's reason to be on both sides and to see the connection and to travel through, but it's also just fantastic to know that there are other communities that are similar enough that you can learn from how they've dealt with some of these challenges, and vice versa. They're going to learn from you as well. And I'm curious about that community buy-in, because I know Dave Lacey, who was featured prominently in that video, the kayak tour company, and I have a little bit of insight to know that that community buy-in was not something that happened overnight, and so I think your struggle is real, and it takes a while. Marcus, I see you jumping in here. I'd love to just hear your perspective on that point specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't create any illusions and say it's going to be easy. As Julie Miller said in that video, she's like, it's going to be difficult and you got to stick with it. And there is some, community organizing methodology to the way that occurred. Travel Oregon's Rural Tourism Studio process is pretty good. It's derived from RDI, Rural Development Initiative, working on rural economic development matters, and it's a process of engagement. And so, I'd look into that, but it takes a while. You do have to give everyone, a chance to voice their opinion, but then also, who is a tourism stakeholder? And, if you're a retired person, it makes it pretty difficult for you to qualify yourself as being a tourism stakeholder. You have a portion of the visitor impact, but, you have to kind of keep it tight and move it forward. And just because there's some blowback doesn't mean you stop. Because there's people relying on you. There's next generations relying on you. There's people who are business owners that are relying on you to be these advocates, and you just got to push through it.
Yeah, here in our county where I'm from, they actually dealt with this in a pretty unique way. We had some county commissioners that changed some policies and directions to take some of the tourism dollars and move that into more capital projects type investments. And when you use that idea that yes, tourism is going to happen and people are going to come here, but we're going to give back to the people that are local that live here. A lot of our retirees really bought into that idea that they're going to come no matter what. So let's build more and work together collaboratively to make connections and give the tourists what they need and spread them out. But when they leave, our local community gets the benefit of that infrastructure. So that's kind of how they've decided to change some policies and work collaboratively. And I think it's a nice model.
It's a very good model.
I would think, Matt, that the real kind of key to that too would be making sure that it was communicated that those funds were paid by visitors.
Yes, that was huge, right?
Not local taxes.
Right. So we're going to capitalize on those funds and give back to locals. That message was clear, and they got a lot of buy-in because of that. Because they're going to come no matter what. Even our port district, very traditional port district around, economic development is buildings and rental space and leasing out and trying to bring manufacturing to our community. Well, COVID flipped that on its head. And so we have people that move here to work from home and work virtually, but they want to live here to play here. So now even our port district is putting aside money for outdoor rec type capital project infrastructure, because if 20 people move to town and all work remotely, that's the same as bringing one manufacturer with 20 employees. So they're really changing their mindset. And then how you share that message to your community, that's where you get that retirement buy-in as well.
Great discussion so far. I think there are other groups that probably can add to the discussion. Who'd like to jump in?
I guess I could jump in.
Yay.
Hey. One of the things that was really interesting that Jacob had to say was that we could benefit from finding out how people get to our areas, finding out what routes people are actually using. So tracking some of that data and finding ways to leverage that so that we know if people are going from north to south or south to north, or where are they stopping along the way. If they come to Pacific County, do they turn right and go to the beaches, or do they just go to Cape Disappointment? So that is data that would would benefit our ability to help people along the way. So that was one thing. And we really liked the facilitated process that they used, and we think it's a good idea. And how do we get it? We also were very excited about the local sustainable food concept for our region.
Nice. Thank you for sharing, Susan. What about from the group I was in? Beth, do you want to be put on the spot to speak in front of everybody?
Sure. Yeah, we just kind of talked about just cross-sector collaboration, how it is important to connect with other sectors. I know we talked a lot about private and public land when developing trails. So I think something like moving forward is making sure that we're engaging all different sectors, because we're not going to be able to do this by ourselves, you know, as a tourism office or as a visitors bureau. We're going to need everyone to be involved. And, you know, with that, we're spreading more knowledge about, you know, how tourism can benefit an area instead of highlighting the negative impacts of it. So, yeah.
Great feedback. Okay, anything else shared? Mike, did you get anything from your group you want to bring to the surface?
Mayor Dingler or Carla, do you want to chime in from our group?
Well, I think we brought a lot to. Carla, go ahead.
No, I was going to let you go. So I think that we found that what we got out of it most was working together, and that all of our communities really need to be working together to promote all of us. So like that farm trail that was in the second segment is a great example of something that we could do in all of our communities, connecting our farms. Also, another one that I had said was our museums. We have a vast amount of great museums in all of our different communities. And so that would be another wonderful way of connecting us all together. So, and we have the rivers and the beaches, just like that segment had as well, which was Wild River Beaches, I believe. Crystal, you remembered that because that was one of your tags that you held on to, and us finding something similar to that. Those three kind of words that you just grab onto, and you know you remember it and want to go. So that was
and it sounds exciting when you hear that. And
right.
if we can brand ourselves with something that sounds exciting, I think that's a big help right there.
Yeah, and that really draws to the point that I was making earlier about being able to come together, find that unifying story that connects the entire region that you want to then elevate to Washington Tourism Alliance can use to promote around the world. It can be challenging, as was pointed out, getting people together and finding agreement. But once it's done, it is very powerful, and I think it's also cathartic. Just wow, we did this. We are part of something. We're in the same community, on the same team. So this is step one, and I shouldn't even say step one, because you folks have been working for many years on this. This is step two in many aspects, and even in our small group, we learned about things that Kevin's been doing with the Sea Grant program, and Jay has been doing at the state parks level, and so you've got a lot of great partners here on this call already that have been investing. And I think just this idea of connecting it to what tourism can bring to the community is a powerful tool to harness. All right, what else? Who am I missing here? I don't want to force you to talk if you feel like things have been said, but I also don't. This is your day, so I want to give you an opportunity to share if we've missed aspects here.
I have a quick tactical suggestion.
Yes.
I know Andy Day is interested in getting some of the big picture data, and I do believe that's necessary. But I think often what's more powerful to people is more testimonial stories about people who actually live there. And so if you had a restaurateur that's on your team that's willing to share a little data, they could sort their expenditures by zip code and say 70% of my customers are out of area, and then sort their vendor list and say these are 5 farms that are making a livelihood from my restaurant. And then you have a story about each of the farmers, because then you basically bring a heritage industry into the conversation. And those farmers are going to be the people around your community they're going to have to sit at the table with and look them in the face and say, I don't support your livelihood. And so that's just a tactical thing while you're waiting for the big picture mega data that you can do right now.
Love it. Great.
That's amazing.
All right, well, let's keep moving here. We've got just under an hour left to go for hanging out together, and we've got a little bit more small group activity that I'm excited for you to be able to do. So I think it, and Marcus, thank you for jumping in there with some tactical and strategic advice, because that's what I'd like to move into next, is just some thoughts about how do we take this to the next level. Several years ago, when I was doing some facilitation up in Snohomish County, a good friend of mine who is the CEO of the Adventure Travel Trade Association, he used to live in Snohomish County, came to the workshops and shared some of his advice from what he's learned doing tourism development work around the globe. And he said that, and back to this idea of forming partnerships, he says that in the destinations that we work in that seem to have their act together, it's because they've been able to engage this magic triangle, as he called it. And in this magic triangle, you've got equal representation from your government people. So your state parks show up to the conversation, your mayors show up, and your county commissioners show up, but also maybe some in your region, for example, tribal governments show up and are invited and participate. But if it was just government doing it, government can't do this by themselves for many reasons. You need the nonprofits, so the DMOs, the Andy Days and the Carla Jensens and the Mike Moes need to be at the table having the conversations as well, and providing their expertise and their insight, and to some extent tapping into funding. But governments and NGOs can't do it alone. As was just brought up, it's really important to get the businesses around. So those are the farmers, those are the restaurant owners, those are the lodging people, and you need equal percentage of them, because the economic development is, we want small businesses to thrive, we want employers to be able to employ, we want people to be employed and to be trained. And so the conversation is, who's missing from this triangle? Even if you have equal representation, are there certain aspects of this triangle that are missing? Like I mentioned the tribal governments, for example, tribal businesses. I think probably I don't see any tour companies, for example. I don't think that are here for this conversation. And so those could be people to make sure that if you know them, or even if you don't, use this as an opportunity to get to know people in your community and say, while we're working on this process, and we learned in the first stage that it would be really useful if you could join us and participate, and we could learn from you and get your insight. The other thing to think about, and I think a lot of this is already happening, is tapping local resources. So not just the tourism entities that exist, but Marcus brought up bringing farmers to the table. They may not be currently engaged in tourism, but maybe they want to be. Maybe they could add to their annual revenue if there is tourism engaged, but also from a storytelling and advocacy component. Producers are squeezed at multiple ends, and so by engaging tourism as the storyteller, that can often provide the advocacy for those industries in order to benefit from grants and resources as well. To tap into that storytelling is harnessing local knowledge, and there's many of you, even in the small groups, I've been able to just learn tremendously about what's going on in the community. So harnessing that local knowledge. And several of you have brought up this idea that the community needs to be engaged. And so that is building enthusiasm for them. And it's a bit of a sales pitch, reminding people that indeed, like Matt was pointing out, by bringing travelers here, we are bringing money into this community that wouldn't exist otherwise. And that money is not just going to flow out to other sources, it's going to stay here and be reinvested in infrastructure, in tourism assets that are great for locals as well. And so hopefully by doing that sales pitch in a way, and by doing that outreach and getting that feedback from folks, you get the community buy-in, and you find avenues for those businesses and those community members to benefit from the tourism that's happening. And ultimately you get that local ownership and the pride in your destination. So again, think to yourself, who's missing? Who is in this in your community that isn't showing up to that either didn't get an invitation or couldn't make it today, but you want to make sure are still engaged in this process. So the final step today is we want to think about what are the assets that you're excited about developing, but specifically, where are the gaps? What needs to be invested in order in that 5, 10, even 15 and 20 year time frame. If we don't start today, we're not going to be able to move the needle on filling those gaps. And Washington Tourism Alliance at the state level is an opportunity to advocate on your behalf, as well as provide expertise and resources. So think specifically about those gaps as to how the Washington Tourism Alliance can support you. So this final breakout session will break into small groups again. You'll think about this region story that we've alluded to throughout the whole workshop this morning. What are some of those shared assets that you're excited to bring to that bigger picture storytelling level? But also, what are the gaps that exist in having that story be completed? And then brainstorm ways that you would like to see Washington Tourism Alliance available to support your region to fill those gaps. Brainstorming is exactly that. It's capturing ideas, and it doesn't matter whether it's possible or not. It's just, and we don't necessarily know what's possible. David Blanford pointed out that there might be some additional funding for recovery that Washington Tourism Alliance gets to invest in our communities. So let's not be held back by the gaps. At the same time, though, think about some of those quick wins as well. Some of those, I think several conversations have come up about we're very close to completing this trail, or we're very close to this marketing campaign or whatever. So in addition to those bigger picture things that might take years to an investment that starts now, what is a quick win that you think this community can do? So you'll choose one of the ideas that your small group is most excited to share. Have a plan B, because you never know, maybe everybody's on the exact same page and you're all thinking about the top idea. And we'll come back in, I think, Mike, 20 minutes again. That seems to be a good round number, and that will give us enough time to do a conclusion at the end. So we'll break into smaller groups. It's 11:10, so we'll come back at 11:30 with some incredible brainstormed ideas for how WTA can support the beaches region.
Dan, but I can kind of jump in here. Who would like to speak for their group? We had a great conversation in our group, but.
Well, I can start from our group, Mike. So our group talked about some of our challenges. One of the things that would like WTA to support us in is education. And again, the data that Andy had mentioned is just so important. It just helps us move any type of tourism dollars forward. We talked a lot about how mass transportation really is a detriment to our tourism, and how even our communities are not connected like Oregon's are. You can drive from each community in Oregon very easily in a couple of hours or an hour or two, and here we just don't have that. We're a very different environment, so there's a struggle with that. But the big idea that I kind of wanted to bring forward is I think it would be great if we had like a 3-day bike race that took place from Ocean Shores to Long Beach to Westport. And it's done in other states. There's a race from, San Diego to Big Bear, which takes 3 days. So I thought that that might be something we could kind of look at just as a pie in the sky idea, is do a bike race between some of our big cities and connect them.
I think that'd be a fun way to connect your full region, and like I mentioned in our group, we definitely, when we get into the regional development program, one of the elective courses is, bike tourism. You guys saw the video from Travel Oregon about how Wild River Coast has developed their region. There's other videos about how communities and regions have developed their bike tourism and how that has really positively impacted their region. And I think it's something that you guys really have an amazing potential for in your region. Another group?
Yes, I could go so people can come behind me and do things that are more inspirational, because a lot of ours is more down to earth stuff. We had a big conversation about the fact that we can only accommodate so many visitors, and people are crowding to our areas right now, and that our biggest need is not marketing to bring more people, but to build our capacity to serve them better. And so that was the focus of our discussion. Our big issues are seasonal workforce housing, access to workforce at all, workforce training. We don't have any temporary services or coverage. So when somebody's down a staff person, we have nobody to do the screening for small businesses. So I think that we have this, it's basically building our infrastructure. So it's an infrastructure build out time right now, and that building our capacity to be able to be good at what we do is what we have an opportunity to do. And then if we wanted something big and visible, because visibility is also a big thing, we also discussed things like facelift grants for areas of towns that are not looking so good, and wayfinding signage, and maybe a big regional project like maybe the ferry that has been discussed. And I'm trying to see if we have anything else.
There was one more. Oh, sorry. The map brought up too.
No, go ahead. Working with government to create incentives. What else did I miss?
The one with that they were doing in Leavenworth, where they had transferred the visitor information center to putting people out, connecting with nonprofits to put people out on trails, and then donating money to that nonprofit for their services. So like Friends of Willapa to provide a birding guide at certain places, and then they would be paid a donation would be made to Friends of Willapa to keep that organization going. But I thought it was an excellent model.
Yeah, it's a good partnership. Yep. That was great.
Great.
Sorry, I forgot to include that.
Susan, I for one think infrastructure can be sexy. Like you can make that. Dan, do we have you back?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah. I don't know what was up with the other headphones. Sorry about that. But you were doing just fine without me. I guess I'm not needed. I really think, Susan, I loved the example of the partnerships that you brought up, because that's really a key aspect here, is when you bring people together around that table, around that triangle that we talked about, you realize that some of these bigger picture items can be accomplished. And especially when we're talking about infrastructure, some of those things take years to implement, but if we don't start today, they're not going to get done. A ferry system throughout the area would be amazing. It will take time, but you have to start somewhere. Good. What other groups would like to jump in? What about the group that I was in? Andy, Beth?
Yeah, I can jump in. I took some notes. So some of the things we discussed are very actionable, easily implemented things, simple things. For example, using the Bandwango platform to create a regional tour. And that could be a museum tour, it could be a culinary tour, a farm tour, so many options with that. But that's something that could happen right out of the gate. That we could work together to create something from Grace Harbor County to Wahkiakum County. Then the other thing that was mentioned, of course, we doubled back on data and the need for very localized industry focused data specific to our regions. Then we also, some of the longer term things, were the infrastructure things, the EV charging, trails, and then of course we touched on transportation and broadband and workforce housing. The one thing too, shifting back over to the visitor experience, is that it's not a nice straight line like the Oregon coast. Is a very convoluted, windy trail, and so maybe some kind of mid-range, we should look at additional wayfinding tools, materials, signage, programming to support movement within our region. And of course, some regional branding would be awesome. And then one of the very specific ideas that came up that would make a lot of sense would be a tour to coast, right? So a regional cycling race, like a multi-day event, would be super, super cool. And a great way to showcase our region with a very values aligned, awesome audience. And jump in, everybody, if I missed anything.
What I love about taking an event like that, like a tour to coast, in order for that to work, you need to build infrastructure around bike routes and people invested in bicycle tourism, for example, and that would be year-round infrastructure that would be useful for the region. So just because it's one weekend of the year where you're focused on it doesn't mean that the rest of the year you're not benefiting from that investment.
Another thing on my list, I realized I forgot, when we were talking about the Tread app, and it's more than an app, it's a program. But I really love what that does potentially too, in terms of interfacing with our agencies. And so I'm being specifically interested if you know your impressions and feedback on that, Jay, as far as would that give us the tools that we need to let people know that they can't take the trail to the Discovery Lighthouse or Cape Disappointment Lighthouse anymore, or which of our DNR lands are open or accessible, or when there is a burn ban in place and does it apply on the beach, things like that. I think that that's definitely something we should look at and consider, and then as well as having that community support component. Like Carol gave the example of if it's something birding information where that could go back and support our birding groups or something.
Excellent. Okay, who else would like to share from one of your groups?
I'll fill it and just say, Andy, I'm thrilled that both of our groups came up with a tour to bike race. That's awesome.
That is what's fun about the small group, is that you never know what people are going to come up with. So there might be some great ideas and you get 15 different new ideas, but it can also be quite powerful when same idea or a similar idea comes up within each group, because then you realize, well, oh, maybe we're onto something here, especially with taking a region-wide approach where folks at the north end of the region might not have been coordinating with the south end, but if you both have the similar idea, you now have new partners to help you develop it. So really good idea. Let's see, should I read? Lynette wrote, Grays Harbor is hosting a virtual business forum tomorrow, so make sure that you guys see her note in the chat. Okay, I think that brings us to our wrap up, our conclusion here for this this session. I do, for what it's worth, have more pictures of. One thing I don't have, I'm not a professional photographer, but I do spend time throughout the state, and doing these workshops motivates me to take photos. And okay, so I'd like us to take a little bit of time here, and I'll stop sharing my screen so you can see each other again. But figuring out what is the now what. Mike pointed out that there's going to be some future tourism workshops hosted by WTA. Several of you have alluded to that could be useful for your region, but where do you want to go next? What do you want to do next with this wonderful energy that was created here? I think there's a lot more. Obviously, we're getting close to busy summer seasons and people may be a little bit spread thin, but I'd love for you to just jump in here and think about where you want to go next with this conversation.
Dan, I forgot to say one thing that came in pretty strongly from our group, which was that they really wanted to, they really liked this conversation, and they would like to be in more regular communication with WTA. So if there's more of an opportunity to share information, that would be welcome.
I think one thing that's really come out of these meetings, and you know, we like I said, we're doing these in all 11 regions throughout our state. I think what'll be really useful is, everybody has said that, like, we need more of this. We need more connection, but not only with WTA, but also with each other. And so I think what's coming out of this is that we need to do this at least quarterly, like where we have not a 4-hour meeting, but maybe like an hour and a half long kind of theme discussion that also provides opportunity for these small groups, you know, to where you can interact with each other. I think that the you know, kind of the Zoom world gives us an opportunity to do that, where it's not taking a whole, you know, half of your day out of the time. We can actually just do it over, you know, virtually, much easier, and really kind of keep this energy going into, you know, our other programs.
Yeah, I think that there are pros and cons. The pro here is, like Mike says, we can do something like this and people don't have to drive. And for, especially in a lot of our state where we have rural, I mean, Andy, you hit on the point that the Washington coast is much more windy. I personally love that aspect of our coast. I think that having a highway plow through the whole thing, like they have in Oregon, takes away some of that adventure, but it does mean for getting to meetings like this a little bit more difficult. So if it's easier for folks to connect this way quarterly, that's amazing. I think we also do want to do the in-person, because I miss the opportunity to connect more intimately and over food and beverage. And of course, for me, the selfish side is that I just love visiting the beaches region. And so that's what I'm personally missing from this work, is that I don't get to be there with you all. But great suggestion though, Susan, and way to tie it into that bigger picture. What next? Who else would like to share? Anything else that you'd like to bring to the what next part?
I just want to comment on that, Dan, that I am in a meeting, the Olympic Culinary Loop, and we meet every quarter, and the first and third quarter we meet in person, and the second and fourth is Zoom. So then we're only just twice a year, you know, doing the drive, but we get to get together quarterly. So.
That seems extremely important for culinary as well, to do the in-person, so you get to benefit from each other's labor.
So, hey, Marcus, maybe you could give us, and thank you so much, Marcus, for being on this call. I think that's just awesome. That just shows what a great neighbor you are. And we have been fortunate enough to have been granted membership in the Oregon Coast Visitor Association for several years now. And I just think that that is so awesome. And so, you know, such a great example of how like kind of, you know, forward thinking and that they are. And, but I see us, you know, I mean, it's so great because you give us so much to emulate. So, but how often do you guys meet?
We meet quarterly with all the regions across the state. So every 3 months, all of there's 7 tourism regions in the whole state. We meet every once a quarter with the state. And then within our region, we've actually divided our region up into 3 sub-regions: North Coast, Central Coast, and South Coast, just because they all have pretty different flavors, different customers from different areas, and different some similar products, but some different products because of that. So, and that's a more varied answer with those sub-regional meetings. The North Coast meets monthly. Actually, we have a North Coast Tourism Management Network meets every month, and it's focused on management, where the South Coast is focused much more on marketing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that would, I would think the North Coast would probably be a more relevant level for us.
Yeah, especially that management piece. I'm sitting in on some meetings in Oregon and knowing about the I think a lot of similar challenges just with over tourism in certain destinations. But I don't know, Marcus, I don't know if this is true in your region, but it's come up several times today in this meeting, just that there's places where it seems there's over tourism happening in the beaches region, but then there's so many off the beaten path aspects that could be developed differently and help disperse some of those people as well. I don't know if that's similar in the North Oregon coast as well.
Yeah, it certainly is. Disbursement is a tactic that we use. There's lots of forest land that could be used for trail systems and whatnot, and it also depends on attracting the right type of visitor, because you don't have to communicate with all visitors, just the types that you want. And when you develop the type of product that the type of visitor you want to visit will be attracted to, the more serious outdoor recreationalists, they're not going to leave trash on the trails. Those are day trippers from Portland that do that to us. And we know because, we don't have any Chick-fil-A's at the coast. I mean, do a little detective work there. So yeah, but it's all about management. And our messaging has gone from inspirational messaging. We haven't done that for half a decade. It's more like, we know you're coming, and so while you're here, consider these things. Mm-hmm. We're a community. Our ports are working waterfronts. And so that kind of cues them in that they're going to have to fit into the coastal community, and it's not just an amusement park.
Yeah, that's definitely the travel has changed dramatically from being a right that people have to being a privilege. And especially when you're inviting people to your community, it should be looked at as a privilege. And I think that messaging is really key.
Yeah, and we an inventory asset we discovered, we had like a dozen restroom facilities that had public art right there. So we created this whole itinerary of restrooms and public art just to educate visitors where the restrooms are. And just get innovative and fun and playful and crafty like that, because you have a lot already. You might be surprised at how much you already have, and maybe you could just use it a different way.
Yeah, great suggestion. Harness what you have. The quick wins. I think, Andy, you pointed that out as well. Well, very good. I'd like to give Mike the opportunity to get the last word in today and help with the now what, just for my own sake, in case you've got suggestions or feedback or ideas. I'd like to give you my contact information in case you didn't have it already. And Mike, I'll give it to you to give the final 2 cents, unless if anyone else wants to jump in.
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to thank you all for being with us. I know it was a long 4-hour meeting, but I think we got a lot done and we had a lot to talk about. So hopefully you got something out of this meeting. I think it's really important to bring this whole region together and connect you all together, as well as connect you with the WTA. And like I said, this is really just a beginning. It's a jumping off point. Right now, we're trying to go through all the regions and make sure we're all kind of on the same page. And Marcus, you left his email down there in the chat, and I'll do the same. But just I want you to think about how we can engage, as the WTA with your region. We talked about, what's next. I think bringing us together every quarter is a really good idea, whether it's over Zoom or if it's in person. Maybe, we, like Diane said, we could do, one Zoom call and then the next one in person, and then we can rotate those meetings around throughout your region. I think that'd be amazing. That means I would get to go to the Beaches region twice a year at the very least. So that's really cool. But I really think that you guys have just so much opportunity. We have an amazing coast. Mary Dingler brought up earlier that, she wants to brand the coast, and we have this enormous opportunity to do that. People, in Chicago, they know about the Oregon coast, but we have this amazing coast here in Washington State. And so how do we tell that story? And so that's really the conversation out of today. And I really look forward to that conversation as we go forward. So thank you again, and onward and upward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody.
Yeah, thanks again.
Great,
Thank
thanks,
you,
everybody.
everyone, for your time.
Thanks, Andy, for representing folks on the board of the Washington Tourism Alliance, and Tiffany, who's gone now, but who's representing on the Washington Marketing Authority, and all the elected officials that are showing up and listening and contributing. That means so much. It's not every region has that dedication from the elected officials. So thank you for you folks for all you're doing. And then all of you in your efforts. I always learn a ton when I get to do these workshops. So thank you for that opportunity.